So excited. Hey, Erin from Shalom Farms, welcome. Shout out to Shalom Farms. Love Shalom Farms. Um, Welcome, y'all. Hey, Angela. Thanks for being here.
Hi, good morning,
Good
afternoon.
afternoon. Hey, David, what's up? Hey, oh, Sportable. Very cool. Welcome. Hi, Katie. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you.
Thank y'all. Oh, it's going too fast. I can't get your names now. Thank y'all so much for being with us today. We're so grateful to be able to have this really important conversation. It's something that we think that is really important. But first, I'll just say welcome to our first Wednesday conversation. This is just a space, a more informal space for people of like minds to come and learn together, learn from each other, and whatever we can offer from our own learnings. We love to be able to offer some space for people to kind of grapple with some of these things that we see in the community, that we see within our organization, and that we want to help be able to navigate with you all. So welcome. It's an informal conversation. We always invite, hey Kenya, we always invite people, if you're taking the last few bites of your lunch or whatever, or having lunch, you're totally welcome to do that. We try to make this kind of informal, and I'm grateful that we have all of y'all with us today. So a quick, who are we? Virginia Community Voice is an organization that is based in Richmond, Virginia. I know that some people who signed up were from out of the country even, which is awesome. And so we're based in Richmond, Virginia, and our mission is to equip neighbors in historically marginalized communities to realize their vision for their community. And then the second part of our vision is to prepare institutions to respond effectively. And so we do that we kind of see that vision happen that mission happen in two ways. One, through our on the ground organizing work, which is the program that we have called RVA Thrives. And the other is our training and coaching work for institutions, which is our blueprint work. And so if you're interested in either of those things, please reach out and let us know. Some of you probably have been involved in some of those things with us, and we're just grateful to have y'all here. So today, we're going to talk about tension and why we think tension is a good thing. I know that is not always something that people would agree with, but it's something that we definitely ascribe to, and we believe very strongly and deeply that tension is a good thing. So let me kind of break that down for you, and then we'll have some time to discuss and to ask questions and to learn. And I do think those who put questions, who send us questions beforehand, we'll make sure we get to those as well. So just a disclaimer, we know tension can show up in a lot of different ways at work, in personal lives, but the tension that we're specifically talking about right now, that does potentially spill into our personal lives. The tension that we're talking about today stems from community organizing tension. Yet the same principles can apply for internal organizational tension, both how we think about tension and how we navigate it. So I just want to kind of say that as we started talking, we're really today talking about kind of how tension kind of comes from the community, which is the work that we do every day and the work that we've kind of dedicated ourselves to. But we also know that tension spills out into all of these other spaces, and the way that we think about tension can translate to personal lives, to other things in your life. So like I said, we view tension as a gift. We think that tension is a symptom that's something wrong, similar to a fever, right? If you have a fever, the fever is not the problem, right? The fever that you have is not the issue. There's an infection, something else in your body And the fever is the symptom that there is something wrong, right? And so that's the way that we think about tension, is like, it can give us, it's a clue for us that there's something deeper that's going on, something deeper wrong, right? Which I think many of us know that, but in practice, sometimes we don't think of tension that way, right? We jump to kind of responding to what the thing is, what the symptom is, right? So we're going to take the medicine to bring the fever down, which is not a bad thing, but we have to get to the root, right? We have to figure out what that infection is. We've got to figure out what the deeper thing is. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. And so from an organizing perspective, tension is important to shine a light on. And so I like to, my roots are in kind of very old school community organizing. That is how I grew up. That is my foundation. And so I always like to reference Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail when we talk about tension, because he talks about it in a really specific way that I think is applicable to this conversation. So I'm going to read a quick excerpt from that, just so that we can have like a grounding for like the way that I think about tension and the way that we think about tension at Virginia Community Voice. Of course, my computer is being weird. Okay. So Dr. King says, you may well ask, why direct action? Why sit-ins? Why marches, and so forth? Isn't negotiation a better path? You are quite right in calling for negotiation. Indeed, this is the very purpose of direct action. Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and foster such tension that a community which is constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. It seeks to dramatize the issue that can no longer be ignored. By citing the creation of tension as a part of the work of the nonviolent register may sound rather shocking, but I must confess that I am not afraid of the word tension. I have earnestly opposed violent tension, but there is a type of constructive, nonviolent tension which is necessary for growth. Just as Socrates felt that it was necessary to create a tension in the mind so that individuals could rise from the bondage of myths and half-truths to the unfettered realm of creative analysis and objective appraisal, so must we see the need for the unfettered realm of creative analysis and objective appraisal. So we must see the need for nonviolent gadflies to create the kind of tension in society that will help men rise from the dark depths of prejudice and racism to the majestic heights of understanding and brotherhood. And so the way that Dr. King kind of talks about tension here is really the way that we think about tension, is this space of tension shines a light, right? It's a symptom that something is wrong, but it's also something that can create the kind of focus on the issues in the community that we are fighting for, and shines that light, right? The tension in our communities already exist, right? The issues that we're fighting for instance, I'll tell you a quick story about a meeting that we were at last night. This is the beauty of Virginia Community Voice. If I do say my social myself, is that we're every day in the community doing work, and then we learn from that work and apply it to what is happening and what we do every day. I'm sorry, my son just started crying very loudly, and it's distracting me a little bit. Forgive me for that. And so that's really kind of what we kind of focus on around tension. And so kind of going back to the community perspective, when we think about like all great movements, so the story I was going to tell you is from last night. Last night we were in a meeting with the community, and we're kind of fighting this for the community's voice to be included in a development that is coming to the South Side. The developers have not been interested in connecting with us on the things that we're asking for. We think the things we're asking for are reasonable. The developers are saying they're not reasonable. And last night we were, Last night, we learned some things about the South Side that felt really important to this conversation around tension. So a couple of the things that we learned was one was about the fact that there are 20 forgive me, I'm sorry, I got very distracted by my son crying very loudly and I couldn't, it's making me worry about if he's okay, but I think he is okay. He's stopped now. So anyway, so what we learned was that on the South Side, there's a 20-year less life expectancy for people who live on the South Side, in part because the South Side is hotter than the rest of the city. The South Side has less tree canopy. People are, there are higher calls to the emergency room on the South Side than any other part of the city for heat-related issues. And the development that we're fighting, and we're not saying don't develop, but we're saying, hey, think about these things as you're developing and incorporate changes to this development that are going to accommodate for these things, because bringing asphalt parking into a community that has really negative outcomes when it comes to heat and issues like that is a part of the conversation, right? The developers are looking at us and saying, you're creating tension, you're creating, you're making this issue bigger than it has to be. You're doing all of these things. And what we're saying is that this is about people's lives. This is about people's ability to connect in the community. This is about people being able to just live, to breathe the air, to be able to move through their community safely. And you're saying that we're causing tension, right? And so that's the kind of conversation that we have around tension, and that's how we become comfortable with it, even when we're talking to public officials, even when we're talking to people who have power to make the decisions that we want to see happen. But the tension, shining a light on that tension, on the realities of people's lives every day, is part of the work of organizing. And we see tension as a gift. It can help us get focused. Like we can say, hey, this tension that people are dealing with every day, we can lift this up, and there can be focus on the issue, as Dr. King talked about. There can be it turns people's heads to say, oh wait, this is a deep problem. It's why the televising of the March on Selma was so impactful, because people then saw what was actually happening, created that tension, and it brought more people to the movement. And so that's part of why we consider kind of tension a gift. If you think about all the great movements, from the French Revolution to the Civil Rights Movement, to the Women's Rights Movement, to the Arab Spring, all of this contains tension. People getting to a point where they are so overwhelmed and so frustrated by what is happening that it erupts into this space of moving toward kind of action and direct action. And people kind of get pushed to the tipping point. And so another few things about tension that I'll say before we kind of give some time to kind of talk about this a little bit more openly. There is a lot of discomfort with tension, right? In general, people, we live in a society that avoids tension. We live in a society, even in our personal relationships and our public relationships, we just want everything to be calm and relaxed. We don't want to deal with tension. And Dana's laughing because we've been talking about this for a while. And every time we talk about it, she's like, I'm sweating. I don't want to talk about tension. She's like, it's too much. But what we realize is that tension is something, again, like I said, it's something that something is wrong, but it also gives us an opportunity to move the conversation forward. And what I always say on our staff and in our spaces is that tension, if we lean into that tension and we push for those changes, we can find something beautiful on the other side of tension. What we've seen this in our staff. I remember, I'll tell a story. The names have been removed for, to protect the innocent. But one of the stories that we had early on when we started as an organization, and we have spaces where we have tension every day and on our staff and amongst our people, but this lens that we take on tension helps us move past it. But I remember early on, two of our staff people, there was an incident where there was tension, right? One staff person felt like they were being disrespected. The other staff person, it was a Black woman and a white woman, and so there was the racial kind of aspect of it. And there was also, this response coming from both staff people of like, hey, this is something's wrong. This is not okay. We are all sitting here and we're feeling this tension. But instead of shying away from it, instead of pulling away from it, these two staff people leaned into it, right? They said, okay, let's actually talk about this. Let's figure out what's going on here. And on the other side of it, we were all crying. We were all like, overwhelmed with the beauty that came on the other side. Both the white staff person learned a lot about how to think about themselves on our staff, and learned, and the Black staff person understood the perspective that the white staff person was coming from, and started to kind of, it changed their perspective as well. And we saw beauty on the other side of the tension, which is where we can get. And as we think about engaging with public officials, as well as our internal conversations around tension, we can lean in to tension to see beauty on the other side. So really quick, the last thing kind of I'll talk about, and then I'll open it up for questions or thoughts around tension and how you all think about it, how you all deal with it, and places that you've come where you've seen tension either go well or go wrong, is when we're talking about people in power. And so I've been thinking a lot about tension with people in power. I think a lot of times when we engage with those who have power to do something about the problems that we are struggling with, we think of tension, we lean into it, as Dr. King said in that quote that I read, we lean into it as like, oh, okay, let's just negotiate on this issue, right? And when we come up against kind of tension or friction with those in power, oftentimes we're like, okay, well, I guess we just lost that issue. I guess it's not going to happen. They're not going to engage. They're not going to push forward. We can keep talking about it, but that's not going to happen. And I think because we're so uncomfortable with tension, and for those with those in power, we get to a point that we end up being resigned to saying, well, they have the power and we don't. But again, going back to Dr. King's quote and shining a light on that tension, bringing the marches, bringing the sit-ins, bringing the direct action opportunities, gives us a way to say, hey, this tension it can get us to a place where people are seeing what's happening, and they're willing to change it. So, part of our response to the tension that we're experiencing with this developer is going to be taking it to, the press, pushing at in other spaces with other people who have power to move these developers to think differently. We're going to put pressure in those places too, so that we can take this tension that the community is feeling, this fear of bringing in unhealthy things into the community. The community also wants a community center to be able to connect. They want the housing that comes into their community to be affordable, and it's not right now. And so all of those things feel like moral statements that we can make about why our community deserves better. And so we take that to the press. We shine a light on the tension that the community is feeling. And those in power don't always like that. But I think we have to understand as citizens that our job is accountability. When someone runs for office, even if you're friends with these people, and I have been, in the past, friends with people who have run for office, that relationship turns from a personal relationship to a public relationship. And as a public figure, as a decision maker, their job is to, be held accountable by their electorate, by the people that have voted for them. And so we have to start to think of it as like not about, this is about me trying to negotiate with a friend or someone that I'm trying to build a relationship with. This is about me negotiating with someone who I, as a citizen, am holding accountable to do the right thing in our community. And that there is tension that comes with that. It's sometimes it's hard to navigate those things, but as someone who steps into those spaces, that's what they've asked for. They've asked for an opportunity to serve us, and so our job is to hold them accountable. And sometimes it doesn't feel right, but when you re-look at the picture and you put yourself in the shoes of the people that are dealing with this tension. I came home honestly last night in tears after that meeting, thinking about the people that I've been working with for years, living in a community that is struggling to just breathe the air, to be able to walk outside and not, have a heat stroke, to be able to just move safely through their community. That made me upset. And that was the tension that I needed to try and push forward the issue that we're working on around a safe development and people-centered development. And so we have to shift ourselves to putting ourselves in the shoes of the people that have been oppressed, as opposed to kind of putting ourselves in the shoes of the people who have the power to change it, right? And if we can keep that mindset, then tension doesn't feel as hard to navigate, because we are identifying and aligning with those who are directly affected by the issues that we're struggling with. And so yeah, I thought, those are a few kind of disclaimer kind of points. And then I'd love to kind of hear y'all's experience with tension and how you think about it, how you navigate it, how you work through it.
I can speak a little bit on tension, I guess. So, but I guess from a kind of a bit of a different lens, but kind of the same kind of different lens. Like the opposite side of the coin, right? Because I just started working at Sportable as an outreach coordinator, and so I don't really have a whole lot of experience, like necessarily working with people in this role. Growing up, yeah, I went to church, and I've worked in the community in that kind of role. But I guess kind of just being having grown up in Richmond, lifelong Richmonder, and being on the other side of the coin of being the person who is experiencing the tension and is looking for the change, right? And I think that, like you said, it's so important that we put ourselves in the shoes of the person who's being oppressed, of the person in the community, not the people with the power, because I think that a lot of times we try to do that because we want to sound, use all the right words and present ourselves professionally and, whatever it is, because we think that if we put ourselves in their shoes, or if we make ourselves relatable to them, and then that makes them more receptive to what we have to say. Yeah. And while that is true, and that might be true, I think that in the process of that, the concessions that are made definitely end up favoring the people in power more than like you said, applying pressure to people in power to make them give the concessions to the people in the community who really they should be conceding to, since it is their community, since they live here. And I think that if we as a city and as organizations can do that, and if we can make sure that if we can make sure that we are approaching it from a community-based lens, which I just took the your training on the way that y'all do things, and that was very, very inspiring to see that there are a lot of people who are looking to the community, right? To I'm losing my words.
No, I get it. Well, clearly I've been losing my words in this conversation as well.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so you're looking,
I understand.
looking to the community for these answers and the ownership, rather than just inserting ourselves as organizations what we think communities need.
Yep.
And I think that addressing that tension is an important part, because I think that sometimes we miss what the community needs because we're trying to avoid the tension. Yes. And we're trying to fit into spaces that are sometimes a little bit easier. And so by facing that tension is, I think, how we can really, really address issues that have been a problem in Richmond specifically, but wherever your organization is,
Mhm.
and whatever your community is, issues that have been going on for years that nobody's talking about because, like you said, everybody wants everything to be hunky dory and to avoid the tension.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you, David. Other thoughts, questions, even concerns, even if you're like, Leah, what are you talking about? This don't make no sense. Like, I'm happy to do this too. Yeah. Hi, Angela.
Hi. I'm not sure exactly how I feel about it. I've kind of always been in a position, even though I try to encourage customers that we work with, to advocate for themselves, be an advocate in the community, speak
Mhm.
up.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if I'm educating them in the proper way, especially because we typically carry on a lot of tension because we don't want to, whether it be as superiors
Mhm.
or community representatives or those higher up in position in the community, a lot of times I think we just kind of stay closed mouth, tight lip,
Mhm.
because we don't want to appear to be the troublemaker or,
Mhm.
just get that feel where we know nothing's going to be done. They're not
Mhm.
listening to us.
Mhm.
Whether you with your employee, you may have these ideas or, who's ever in charge, it may just, that may just not sound right to you. And you think of, some other ideas or suggestion, but you don't want to, ruffle any feathers. So, and I
Mhm.
just think we have a tendency just to hold that tension,
Mhm.
keep it within ourselves until we're about to burst. But
Yeah.
at the same time, we want the individuals we are working with, we want to empower them and we want to tell them, advocate for yourself and advocate for your children. But we're working with them and we're not even doing it for ourselves because
Mhm.
we are afraid of the tension that it.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think I I know we started this conversation out talking about that this is a community, we focus on the community and sometimes organizational tension, but the truth is that this is about even our personal lives and the way that we engage and even the way that we train other people, because we have been taught, our culture says that engaging with tension, engaging with things that are uncomfortable is we just don't do it. Like, we just want to keep everything copacetic. We want to, keep everything, calm. And so engaging with tension is not something that we should be doing. We should just be, letting it go, letting it roll off the back, not right. But it's actually unhealthy to lean into a space where we're so confrontation averse that we just leave things. And I think advocating for yourself and advocating for the community in itself is a contentious notion, right? It is a contentious notion to stand up and say the truth of what's going on when the status quo is saying we're just going to leave it that way. The reason that these developers and the community don't want to change their development, because that's just the way things have always been done. Like, you're not going to tell me to put in a permeable surface so that water can get through and to change the heat issues in our deal with the heat issues in our community, because that's going to cost me more money. You're not going to tell me to build a parking deck instead of a asphalt parking lot, when it's fine to just build an asphalt parking lot, when you can preserve green space, though, if you build a parking deck, because it's easier to do it this way. And the status quo, that's the status quo. No one's telling me to do more. No one's pushing me to do more, especially the powers that be, right? The city is not telling me I have to do this. So who are you to come to me and say, so in itself, that notion of saying, no, I'm going to raise my hand and say, absolutely not, that's not okay. That in itself is contentious. And so when we're prepping people to advocate for themselves, when we're prepping people to stand and speak for themselves, we also have to prep them for the tension that comes with that and teach them that it's okay to feel that tension, to lean into that tension, and to call out that tension. Like all of those things are okay. And we have to normalize that, not only in our professional lives, but in our personal lives. When we have tension with people in our homes, with our kids, with our, our partners, with whoever, friends, normalizing tension in general is a good thing, because it gives us a space to say, hey, I care about this community, I care about this person, I care about this relationship enough to lean in to the fact that I can see something is wrong, and call the thing out and work through it and push to the other side where something can be more beautiful. And it doesn't mean that, I think the other conversation about tension is that it is a long haul. It's not, when you, just because you lean into the tension, have these conversations and prep people for it, doesn't mean that the decision makers are going to listen right away. It doesn't mean that they're going to change the things that they're doing right away, but it does mean that it gives the people that we're working with on a regular basis, and we're from Virginia Community Voices perspective, the community that we are engaging with and we're standing with and we're learning from, it gives them, it fortifies them to be able to lean into something that that our culture says we should not be leaning into, right? And so, and which gives people stamina to stay in it for the long haul, right? If they know that they can lean into that tension, if they know they can lean into the uncomfortable things, and it's okay, because most of the time our response is, oh, we're just going to leave. These people are being troublemakers, they're doing too much, we're just going to leave. But if we can teach people about what it looks like to engage with tension, then we can lean into that long haul, road of what it means to actually stand up and use your voice and advocate. Does that make sense? Other questions, thoughts, concerns about it? Angela, yeah, does that make sense?
Yes.
I'll share. Thank you so much for the conversation. I just really appreciate thinking about like tension on a community level, and also how we hold that in our bodies, which I loved how Angela named, like, we often just hold the tension in our bodies until we explode, right? Mm-hmm. And how you're talking, Leah, about when we get practice in it, we're actually practicing like building our own resilience in the face of that. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think it's also just interesting from a like somatics perspective also, mm-hmm. to think about like, well, how are we experiencing tension, whether that's with a family member or in a community meeting, or, whatever situation that is on a political, in an advocacy perspective level, like, how are we experiencing that? Mm-hmm. And how do we then like regulate our own nervous systems so that we're not just exploding and reacting, but we're actually approaching, whether it's, trying to resolve the tension, or actually just being like fierce and direct and standing up for ourselves and our community, but doing that from a centered place. So that we're not just like throwing ourselves at it. Absolutely. But like regulating ourselves too. And that's all practice, and it's all building our own resilience and our own resourcing. So
absolutely. And we talk about it in organizing terms. We call it cold anger, right? So it's this idea that we can have that tension, that passion, that anger about what's going on. A lot of times when we have conversations with neighbors, we start the conversation with like, what's keeping you up at night? Or another way to ask that question is, what's making you angry? Okay, now then how do we take that anger and funnel it into a productive place? So we bring the heat down on that anger. We call it cold anger, right? And then when it's cold anger, then you can funnel it into productivity and moving something forward, as opposed to, as you're pointing out, Erin, the like just exploding out on people. With the anger, we can funnel it into a place where we all can relate to that anger. We can talk, like, for instance, I was angry last night coming out of that meeting, hearing that my friends and colleagues and people that I've been working with for several years now on the South Side are living in a place where their life expectancy is 20 years less than the rest of the city. That makes me angry. It makes me angry that people are going to the emergency room on the South Side more than they are in other parts of the community because it's too hot. And it makes me angry that developers aren't considering that as they're building in our communities. And it makes me angry that that's on the back of a Black community that has seen so much heartache and pain already and oppression already. So all of that makes me very angry. You can ask my husband. I came home very angry last night. But funneling that into strategy, funneling that into, okay, who do I need to talk to? Let me power map this situation out. Let me figure out who are the right people to bring into the conversation so that we can move this forward. Who are the people we haven't talked to? If we're hitting a brick wall with these people, where do we need to go around it? Who can we bring in to move this issue forward? That's taking that hot anger that was very hot and funneling it into cold anger that actually moves the conversation forward. Does that make sense? Does that resonate? Yeah. Other thoughts and questions?
Hello. I said I was going to stay unmuted or muted because I'm allowed in a loud environment, which is basically my house, but my dog wants to join in, but he's asleep now. But I wanted to just, I guess, interject. And first I have a question. The question is, do you have a copy of those statistics that I could utilize? Because as you know, and some of you know, I'm on the Health Equity Fund, and we could really use information like that to try to help our cause, because, you know, we face a lot of tension when we bring up the issues of, you know, marginalized communities and how the maternal, you know, death rate is really, you know, we're that of a third world country right now. So there's a lot of things that we're trying to do as far as getting access. And what's alarming to me as someone that has worked in the healthcare field is seeing how patients are treated. And, you know, a lot of times if they are Black, and especially if they're female, they could be having problems with heat or anything. My own personal story was my god sister was taken by ambulance last week to the hospital because she suffered from heat exhaustion. So she was right at a heat stroke. And they kept asking her, had she been drinking? And she said, no, I have not, you know, and she had passed out multiple times. She was very, very sick. The people in the ambulance, they knew, you know, something was very wrong. Her partner was with her. She kept answering all the questions. She hasn't had anything to drink. Oh, well, she's probably dehydrated. No, she hasn't had any alcohol, if that's what you're, you know. And they were like, well, you know, it's July the 4th and yada, yada, yada. And it took a lot of tension, I guess, for her to advocate for my god sister, for them to even start the right course of treatment. And when that happens, you know, it bothers me a lot because, again, if they show up in the ER and they already have those comorbidities that, you know, people, you know, we found out during COVID that, you know, before they even wanted to answer, why were you doing this? Or why did you keep turning them away from the ER? They said, oh, no, you know, communities of Black and brown people are dying more often because they smoke and drink. I'm like, who doesn't smoke and drink out here in America? You know, that's not an excuse, you know, but what was happening is, and as you know, VCU and Gibbenham are the closest to the South Side. And those are the places, you know, when I used to roll on the wheels in the ambulance and everything, we would see a lot of attitude. And being in the ministry, I would have to talk to some of the providers. I'm like, listen, you know, we're bringing a patient to you. We'll just dump them out in the front room. And I'm like, no, when we got them, they were laying on the ground. And just because they're conscious now does not mean that they can sign themselves in. And I saw a lot of that. And I had to advocate for our patients, even though they were in a stretcher. The healthcare professionals, they seemed like they didn't care. And this is before COVID. So when COVID came around, it was terrifying. And I think I told you about my family situation. We lost 13 family members the first year of COVID. And I stopped counting after that. And I, you know, so I want those statistics because I think that
I will definitely get them to you. We have, there's a couple of different studies that that we can get, one done by the Science Museum, one done by the University of Richmond and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And so They were the
Okay.
ones who came and did the Chesapeake Bay Foundation were the ones who came and did the presentation last night. And so, yeah,
Okay.
I will definitely get those to you. But you're absolutely right. All of those things, right, can lean, you know, it makes us all feel angry, right? That
Right.
anger. But like, how do we take that anger? How do we take that tension that we are feeling and and funnel that into a place where we are moving the cause forward, moving the movement forward, as opposed to just being angry in the moment. The anger in the moment, it's justified. We should all be angry. We should all be in arms about these things. We should all be fighting and trying to find our spot in the movement to change these things. But we have to think about tension as a part of that, right? So it's not, as Erin was talking about, we're just exploding on people, but it's also not, we're just being paralyzed by apathy, right? Where we just kind of say, you know what, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to get better. So we're just going to sit back and let it happen, right? So we've got to find the place between that where we say we're going to take the realities of the moment, take the tension that is in this moment, and funnel that into movement and change that we want to see. Right? We can't sit idly by. At the end of that quote, that I was going to read the whole thing, but I was like, y'all don't want to just listen to me quote Dr. King. He says, you know, that's it. The famous kind of line from that part of it is justice delayed is justice denied. You know, you can't keep telling us to wait and to be quiet and to be silent and to calm down, which is what we hear a lot, right? That's actually what these developers have told us, is like, you guys just bring the temperature down. That's what they keep telling us, bring the temperature down. You know, there's a long road, right? But we know that there's an urgency to this moment. There's an urgency to this time, and it is okay for us to fight. But we've got to funnel that into productive movement, as opposed to being paralyzed or exploding in anger. And neither of those things are going to push us forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was just my spiel. I'm gonna
thank you,
go back and mute myself, but thank you for just allowing me to say that.
Of course.
And one last thing, the one thing that I have done is through all of this, through all the loss, the pain, the hurt, that's how I ended up getting with the Health Equity CAC, because I was looking for a way to be a voice, to be an advocate, but I also did not want to bring boxing gloves to every meeting. I did not want to drag my soapbox everywhere I went. I didn't want to be an advocate and a bully at the same time. And I did not want to be the stereotypical mad Black woman, because that actually is a thing. It's not true. It's a stereotype. You see it in commercials and TV. But as soon as I got loud, it's, oh, bring it down a little bit. You know, like you said, they told you to bring the temperature down. That is beyond irony, because they're raising the temperature by wanting to build a asphalt jungle. So that is beyond irony. So yeah, okay, we'll start with that. You want us to bring the temperature down? You first.
And we'll just keep bringing more people to it. Right now y'all all know about it, right? So the next time we need somebody, we'll make sure y'all know where, you know, we're just going to keep, the temperature doesn't come down. We're just going to keep organizing. We're going to keep bringing more people to it. We're going to keep teaching other people how to engage with tension. We're going to keep reproducing the conversation so that other people are equipped to lean into that. So thank you, Kenya, for that. Any other thoughts before our time is up today? And thank y'all for being so generous with me, as I lost some of my thoughts in the beginning with my son. We think that he bit his tongue when he was eating lunch, and and it just freaked him out so much that he started having just a fit. And so we were trying to calm him down, and he wants mama, of course, and in a meeting. So forgive me for that, but I appreciate your grace in that moment. Any other questions or thoughts?
Long as your baby's okay.
He's okay. He's okay.
I just want to say this was great, really, really great, and I can't wait for the next one.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful it was helpful.
Yes.
Any other comments, ideas? situations where tension has showed up and you haven't known what to do, or you have seen it again on the other side become more beautiful?
I'm sensing tension in this.
Hmm?
That's a joke, guys.
Are y'all feeling tension? Anybody feeling tension about the conversation? It's okay if you are. That's the point to name it.
No, I just want to ask a question. Have
Sure.
any of you all ever been in a situation and work just as agency-wide meeting, staff meeting or something, and those in charge, is doing a presentation about something, and it's like the whole room doesn't like that idea, think it's a horrible idea, just feeling all these things about it, but not one person will raise a hand and say, or even ask questions about it, and everybody leaves, and then you hearing all this talk. Well, I just thought it was a crazy idea. Why don't we just whatever the situation may be. But it's like nobody will step up, speak up, and everybody just carry their attention back with them. And then, they may talk to other coworkers about it. I'm just wonder when that kind of cycle, it's, where we all gonna be in a space where, where it's okay if you don't agree, and it's okay if you speak up on it without getting in trouble, fear of retaliation, and fear of your job.
Yeah, I think that's such an incredible point. And I will say, I have been there. I'm sure many of us have been there. What I will say in those moments, and the way that we try to combat that at Virginia Community Voice, is this perspective on tension, right? So we invite people in our organization to say, like, hey, I don't like that idea. Here's why. It's because more times than not, like, so to your point, Angela, having people stand up, do a presentation, say, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is the way we're going to go. And everybody thinks it's a terrible idea, but nobody says anything. That does not serve the organization. And so if you do not have processes in place to keep that from happening, right? To make sure that people have opportunity for voice to push back, to say, I don't think that's a good idea, to say, hey, can we think about it this way? Can we engage with it this way? Can we add to it, right? I have always found that, and I've seen this many times, even in the community, where I'll go and I'll offer an idea and the community members are like, that's not a good idea. That's not going to work. That's just not going to work. I mean, when we first came to the South Side, we were putting together a survey to get a kind of a needs assessment of what was going on in the South Side, what people needed and wanted. And we brought the survey to our steering committee and we said, hey, y'all, tell us what you think. Like, one of the committee members raised her hand. She said, Ms. Deborah, she said, y'all are making us do too much. This survey does not, no, absolutely not. And so we had to say, oh, okay, we're going to take it back. We're going to redo it. We're going to take all the ideas that you had. We're going to rework this thing. And then we're going to bring it back. And I remember the moment where, right, and it was a tense moment. People were like, oh my gosh, did you really say that? And we were like, it's cool. That's what we want you to say. That's what you have to offer opportunities for those kinds of things. And then we took it back and we changed everything, and we came back and we brought it back to them and said, what do you think now? And I remember Ms. Deborah's response, and she would tell you this if she was here. She was just like, y'all changed all this because of what I said? And do you know what leaning into tension does, right? It helps people know that their voice matters, right? So like leaning into that tension in that moment helped Ms. Deborah realize that her voice was important. And if she hadn't said anything, then we would have gone down this road. We wouldn't have gotten the survey response that we got. We wouldn't have been able to get the community engagement that we got. If she hadn't said anything, we would have gone down the wrong road. And so if we look at tension as a gift, if we look at it as something that can be valuable, in the moment to help us get to where we're trying to go, then we take away that power of the tension. We diffuse that, and we allow for open, honest conversation that gets us to a place where we're better for it, right? And every single time I've experienced that tension of like people saying, "Nah, I don't think that's a good idea," if I take my defenses down and say, "Okay, tell me what would be better," it always comes out more beautiful on the other side. Like with our staff, with the community, no matter where, if I don't let the tension be a thing that makes me push back against people and use it as an opportunity to navigate, hear what people have to say, it does two things. It gives me a better, whatever the thing I'm trying to do, it makes it better. And it helps the community and those on our staff or whoever know that their voice matters. And so it can do two things, multiple things it does, but at least those I found are really important. And so having a process to think about, like, how do I engage with tension from my own body's perspective, to Erin's point, differently? And then how do I, so that I bring my tension down when someone, comes at me in a certain way? And then how do I teach people that their voice matters through this process? And we're at 12:58, so thank y'all so much for being here. Know if you want to engage with us more on topics like this, and we have a coaching and training program. We're always open to emails, just to checking in and talking. We want to create and cultivate a community of people that are leaning into this work and trying to learn together and working together to move these things forward in our communities. And so this is a space that's who we are as an organization. So thank y'all so much for being here. This is our Director of Equity Improvement, Flo. So if you want to learn more about our coaching program, reach out to Flo, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Listen up to this truth. You are me and I am you. Every one of us is worthy. Baby, girl, worthy woman. Every one of us is worthy. I know your life, I felt your pain. I know your joys and your shames. Sometimes it feels like life walks over you, or like you're a penny on the ground. But either on the ground or in your purse, the smallest piece still holds its worth. Every one of us is worthy. Baby, girl, worthy woman, every one of us is worthy. Baby, girl, worthy.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was like huh?
It's still recording.
Oh. Monty, can you turn the recording off?